Welcome, everyone. Today, we are diving deep into one of the hottest K 12 announcements this summer, and that's Google's slew of product launches at ISTE last week. In case anyone was on a deserted island with no internet, Google announced the launch of Gemini in Classroom with 30 plus AI tools for educators at no cost, a version of the Gemini app built specifically for education called Gemini for Education, expanded access to their collaborative video creation app called Google Vids, now available for all education users, and class tools for managed Chromebooks. To help us better understand all these announcements and discuss the implications for students, educators, and the education ecosystem as a whole, I'm super excited to have Shantanu Sinha, the VP of Google for Education, here today. Welcome, Shantanu.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Before we get into the announcements, I want to spend a little time on your background because in addition to leading like education focused teams at Google for over 9 years now, you were also previously the founding president and COO at Khan Academy, which is another leading innovator in education and the application of AI in education. Perhaps you can start off by sharing with us how your time at Khan informed how you think about building educational products at Google.
Yeah, I think I've long believed that technology could have this dramatic impact on making learning both more accessible for more of the world as well as more personal, really helping people get exactly what they need through that process. And I think that was very core to how we thought about starting Khan Academy in the early days. And I actually feel very privileged that I've been able to work on kind of Khan Academy during the early dawn of YouTube, online learning, making educational information accessible, and now at Google on kind of the dawn of AI. And there's definitely similarities there. On the early days of Khan Academy, I think one of the things that we were thinking about a lot was we have things like public libraries and public schools. Why don't we have a publicly available fantastic algebra course or biology course? It doesn't cost that much to do, and it was core to our mission to make information like that accessible. And we saw very quickly that when you put stuff out there, people interact with it in different ways. They get help in different ways, and it starts to hit kind of their personal needs. And really, we built off of that, and has been a really big part of the journey for Khan Academy. At Google, I think it's always been a part of our mission. I think that's why it was actually very, we partnered a lot with Google when I was at Khan Academy, and it's been a very natural kind of mission oriented approach because Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it more useful and accessible. And a big part of that is making information accessible, making learning accessible, and learning is some of the most useful information you can have. And we see that across our products when we think about YouTube and search, which we really built Khan Academy off of, kind of the power of those products. It's connecting people to knowledge and information and helping them. And now we're bringing AI into these experiences with things like AI mode and search that's opening up all kinds of possibilities. And as we think about the other products that we're developing, these AI first products like Gemini, Notebook LM, all kinds of new possibilities, and our core products in Google for Education that we've had for a long time, like Chromebooks and Classroom and Workspace, really excited about how we can infuse AI into those experiences and continue to make learning both more accessible and more personal for audiences.
Yeah, I'm making learning accessible. I think that's a mission that's also near and dear to GSV's heart as well. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to kind of like dig into these products that are trying to do just that, right? Make learning accessible on a global scale. So let's kind of get into the announcements and we'll try to hit all the details. And I think first, one of the areas, and you mentioned this too, is there's been quite a lot of chatter around the 30 plus tools available at no cost in Google Classroom. You mentioned like create a rubric, draft an exemplar, brainstorm real world examples. It's a lot. There's a lot of great features to absorb. One of the topics that I've also heard is how ready are schools to adopt these tools? There's a huge variety of comfort and understanding around AI in general. Can you talk a little bit about whether Google provides any best practices or PD to help understand not just how to incorporate these tools into one's workflow, but also how to make it so that their teaching is more impactful when they utilize these tools?
Yeah, it's a great question. And then I think one of the remarkable things about AI is the breadth of what you can do with it. I mean, it is astounding, right? Like it's such a wide set of use cases, and it can be overwhelming, right? I mean, as we bring AI into so many different products and tools, there's so much you can do in different ways with it. And we see lots of different challenges, right? There's a kind of a cold start problem, which is like, okay, where do I even begin with this thing? There's just awareness on what are the different use cases that you can do? How does that fit into my day-to-day life? It's how do you use these things effectively? So it is something that we've been working and actually partnering. We partnered with MIT RAISE, Responsible AI organization, to make generative AI for educators course that is available, freely available in our Google for Education Learning Center. We have a ton of resources around different ways you can use generative AI, our tools, different use cases. But then I think the second part of it is I think we really pride ourselves at Google on making tools that are simple and approachable for users. I think it's been a big part of our secret sauce for Google Classroom, Workspace, Chromebooks for a long time. They just work and people get it. And we've also, and a big part of the things that we've launched with ISTE is to try to bring the power of Gemini that people have seen, it's been around for some time, but make it so people understand it. They can get inspired with what they can do. It can be much more simpler to get started and trying to make really simple experiences for educators so they can understand how it can fit into their day-to-day lives.
Creating products which are simple is not an easy feat. And so I definitely applaud in terms of that and helping people gain access. Which of these tools have you found like in the piloting? Because I'm sure you've tested them with, and you've worked, like you said, with partners on that. Which of them have you found to kind of be most exciting and easy, kind of the natural engagement for teachers?
You're exactly right. We've been piloting these tools for the greater part of the last year in different forms, and some of these tools have been available in our paid tiers that we now made available more broadly, more accessible. I would say it's hard to. People are excited by so much of it, so there's so many different aspects of that. I do think there's kind of like some of these core use cases that you think of, like quiz generation or helping with lesson plan or a hook generation that people. They definitely use and they definitely get excited and kind of more of these block and tackling things that happen very often in people's day-to-day lives. I think there's a lot of excitement on the broad capability of content transformation and generation. And there is so much you can do there. Notebook LM has been a huge hit where people see like, wow, I can take this grounded content, I can make an audio podcast. It's definitely one of those wow factors when people see it. And now we can actually create that in different languages, which intellectually you see that it's like that makes sense, but when you watch it happen, it's still everybody's jaws drop when you really see a podcast in any language and what that means in terms of, again, making information accessible and for all around the world. It's pretty remarkable. I think many of our other content generation capabilities, VO3 and the video generation stuff and some of the stuff we're doing with Vids, many of the tools that we have on being able to just translate and level content more easily. All of it is stuff that different people are getting excited about. I don't expect everybody to use all of it, and I think that's why what we're really focused on is helping people understand how powerful this technology is, what they can do with it, and making it so that they can be inspired and find the things that are going to fit into helping them and really kind of saving them time on their tasks on a given day.
And that's an interesting one because I think that's a lot of the feedback we've heard from teachers, right? Like, wow, this will help me save time. And this content generation capability enables me to do everything so much faster that I wouldn't want to do otherwise. Is that kind of the North Star goal for Google Classroom? Is it helping teachers to save time? Or are there any other measurable goals around improving teaching quality or pedagogical practices that you guys also aim to measure and influence?
Yeah, we really think of our work as helping our users and helping everyone kind of unleash their personal potential. And with that, I think for teachers, that is helping teachers save time, be more efficient, be more effective in what they can do within the classroom. I think for students, it is, going back to really helping teachers create experiences in the classroom that can be more personalized, more tailored richer educational experiences. So we do work on different aspects of that. For example, we have features like Read Along, which is a personal tutor to help with early literacy and help students get real-time feedback on how they're reading, and really finding ways that teachers can create an experience where we piloted, we've tested it, we've seen really great efficacy studies on when we put this into users' hands, how do we encourage the creation of experiences like that and the distribution and scale of experiences like that. So we really do look at both the, really all aspects of it, helping teachers save time, helping students have richer learning experiences across our products, Search YouTube, all of those fit into that, as well as helping administrators, frankly, help them manage what's going on in schools, help them have analytics, data, and really trying to support all of the different audiences there.
You mentioned something earlier, which is the Vids, Google Vids. And I think this is like one of the really exciting announcements, right? This push for, or ability for multimodality of outputs, right? Having learners be able to not just get voice or text, but also be able to consume content in other ways. Can you talk a little bit more about the different features now, like Google Vids? And I know there was also video overviews for Notebook LM announced. Can you talk a little bit more about these two products, like how teachers use them, how they differ?
Yeah, it's really exciting. So Google Vids is one of our kind of newest products in our workspace portfolio, and it's a video, really more of an AI first way of thinking about video generation, and it's a great a set of tools where you can really support creating videos much more quickly. And teachers are starting to love it. They're using it on different things. They're creating lessons. They're teach students project-based learning for students to help kind of create a video. It really fits into that broad portfolio of creation tools that we have with Workspace, with Doc Slides, and now with Vids. On Notebook LM, as we touched upon, Notebook LM is a new product that was really grounded on, or based on, that concept that these large language models can be a lot more powerful when they're grounded on content. There's this hallucination problem that we all know that exists, but if you can ground it on content, you can really create a new type of experience. And with Gemini, we have massively large context window, million token context windows. We have search. We have really good ways of creating a lot of content that you can ground these experiences on. And one of the runaway hits out of Notebook LM has been that audio podcast feature that we mentioned, where you can take that content and generate an audio podcast. And a new feature that we have that you're alluding to that we're rolling out is the video version of that. So it's essentially upload a bunch of content, click a button, wait a couple, wait a little bit, and come back, and you will see an amazing video made based on that content with visuals, leveraging our image capabilities, as well as all the great richness that we've had from our audio podcasts before.
And that's quite powerful now, this ability for both, anybody, right? Like a teacher or student now to be able to create educational learning materials that are grounded. I'm assuming like in either their curriculum or their existing lesson plan. I mean, is that kind of one way to ensure that the content that they're creating, I think there's a lot of concern around high slop and how good is quality content there, is not only accurate, like you said, doesn't have hallucinations, but it's also like pedagogically useful and impactful.
Yeah, I think that's a really big part of this, which is if you give these models more content to ground it on, more context on the pedagogical approach you want. So even the rubric that you're going to use, or the style, and there's not one size, as we all know, different parts of the world have a lot of different curriculum, a lot of different standards, a lot of different things that they're thinking about. But if that's incorporated in your process when you're creating these materials, you get very different quality outputs. And I think that's exactly right with both really across all the functionality. Gemini, you can upload content in our classroom tools, and making it much easier to bring in that context. With Notebook LM, it's really built on that. So it has been a big part of how we think about ensuring that educators are going to get much higher quality outputs than you're going to get if you just put in a prompt directly into a chatbot.
I want to kind of start with the basics because I think we'll have a range of people in terms of familiarity with the various different AI products. Like, what is Gemini app for education? Let's just start there.
Yeah, so Gemini for Education is a new edition of the Gemini app, which is our kind of large language model that you can directly interact with, that we recently rolled out. And there's a few things that we've been able to bring to really kind of purpose built this for education. And uh, one is enterprise quality data protection, which is critically important if you're going to bring this type of technology into schools. So with our Gemini for Education um, product, it's under our existing Google Workspace for Education terms of service that have been around for 15 plus years, that are trusted by schools. They understand, we're not looking at that data, we're not training on that data. It's completely data protected. It has all the COPPA, FERPA compliance requirements. It recently got the Common Sense Media privacy seal. So, schools can have a lot of confidence that people can use this, and the data is being handled appropriately within an educational context. We've also, as a part of the Gemini for Education, been able to um, uh, open this up now for schools to control exactly who gets access. Whereas before we limited it so it's only 18 plus or 13, but we've now really brought in enhanced safety functionality for all of our under 18 users. That's built into the product, and that allows us, and many schools and educational leaders are really excited that they're now in the driver's seat on being able to control who has access, who doesn't have access within their institution. People are going to make different choices on that, but we're putting that control back into the school's hands on being able to have a product that is safe, and making the decisions on who gets access to it. And then the third part is we've been spending a lot of time really trying to ensure that our models aren't just good on these benchmarks, but are actually pedagogically useful. So there's this work that we've been doing for a couple of years now called LearnLM, where we've benchmarked it against pedagogical practices, and we have a flavor of Gemini that is really pushing the frontier of that. We've now been able to bring a lot of that LearnLM greatness into our core Gemini 2.5 models. So that's a part of what educators and schools get with Gemini for Education. And then we're also giving expanded quota and expanded access to Gemini beyond what people would get normally for education institutions. So it's both the access to the best models here with a little bit of expanded quotas.
You also talked a lot about the data control, and I want to get to that shortly. But to kind of talk about this access, one of the things now is it's like you said, it's available now to students as well, right? I think this is kind of a big moment in that it's not just teacher efficiency tools, things that allow teachers to do their work, but also like putting the AI in the hands of students, which is critically important because there's no way to get AI literacy without utilizing the tools in some way as well. How do you guys think about ensuring for teachers that the engagement with the students is something that they can be comfortable with? Right? Is there monitoring of those conversations? How can educators and administrators feel comfortable that they are utilizing the AI in a way that they want them to and that is beneficial
Yeah,
to the students?
yeah, I think it's a core part of what we've really thought about and what we've been trying to build out. Because I think you're exactly right, that we believe that you're going to have much richer experiences when you can kind of put the teacher in the loop on these AI experiences. So the reality is, as we all know, students are going directly in many cases outside of the school. That's been, from the last 3 years, that's been a behavior that we've seen, and schools have really like try to manage that, which is on one hand, there's all this benefit. On the other hand, they may be using these tools inappropriately or in the wrong ways when they're kind of going directly. And one of the things that we believe and what we've tried to build into our products is more of those controls around enabling a teacher to be a part of that process. So with our classroom gems, for example, the teacher can customize that experience, make sure it's doing exactly what they want, grounded in the exact content that they had in the class that they just taught. Maybe they add extra things in the instructions to say, well, don't give the answer, or don't act this way, or align it to these standards. They can really customize it exactly the way they want and assign it to their student. So we think being able to put that control in kind of the teacher in the loop in that process is going to create richer educational experience that ultimately are better for the student. And the reality is, at least from what I've seen and when I talk to my own kids and others, like, people want to use the benefit of it, but they also are very careful. Like, they don't want to be using it incorrectly. Having a teacher to be able to say, don't do that. Don't go directly and just asking for an answer. Use this version that I created for you that's going to use this way. I think there's actually, it gives the outlet for teachers and students to use AI the way that's most beneficial, where they're getting the benefits, but actually directs them to the more appropriate use cases for AI.
Yeah. I noticed in this case that going through the product launch release, there was not, even around these gems and this ability to really customize the learning experience for the student. You definitely avoided the word tutor. Was that intentional? Is there a hope that one day, it's a TA for every teacher or tutor for every student? Or, yeah, why or why not use the word tutor?
I don't know if it was as intentional. It wasn't, directly on all the naming, well, the copy of everything on the marketing materials. But I would say that one of the things that's interesting with AI is that I think it goes back to the generalizability of what it can do, where, it is, Gemini is, yeah, it can do some of the things that a personal tutor can do. It can some of the things that a teaching assistant can do. It can do some of the things a data analyst can do. It can do some of the things that a debate coach and a brainstormer, like, it can do all kinds of different things. So one hand, when you use words that are, kind of very specific, it's actually in some ways understating the power of AI and its generalizability. So it's one way too narrow. On the other hand, it's also too deep, because the reality, and I think, again, I'm probably speaking for myself here in terms of, when you use a profession, a human profession, AI is doing part of that, but it's obviously not doing all of it. And at least for me, when I think about a tutor, um, there's a part of that which is helping a student when they're stuck on a problem and helping them understand what they didn't see and finding their mistake. And I think AI can do a lot of that. But if you actually look at some of the benefits from tutoring, like high dosage tutoring, what you see is a big part of that is the relationship to the other human being. A big part of that is the commitment that I'm going to talk to this person on a regular basis and they're going to hold me accountable. And in some ways, like, that's not what AI is trying to do. It's not trying to replace the role of humans in these ways. So at least from my standpoint, when I look at it, it's like, when you use a profession, it's one, narrow, it doesn't represent the breadth that AI is doing, and two,
Mm-hmm.
it's too deep, because it's not, AI is not trying to do that whole, everything that profession is doing. It's trying to help you with little parts of that and actually make it more effective. So at least it's one way that I think about it.
The human connection is incredibly important, right, when it comes to learning and fostering motivation. And I think you bring a great point that there are some things that the AI is really good at, and there are some things that the AI, it's not meant to replace. Are there other aspects as you think about kind of these tools that you think doesn't make sense? Or we've talked a lot about what they can do. What do you think, like, they shouldn't be doing when it comes to the classroom?
I mean, I think it's hard to see where, like, I think if you look at the speed of innovation in this, it's really hard to predict out um, uh, too far. So it's hard to say blanket statements on this. But I would say, like, I go back to the core of what we're trying to do, right? And ultimately, educators are trying to create really rich experiences in their classroom for students, and students are trying to ensure that they're learning the material and kind of getting inspired, and they're getting the right broader skills, right? The collaboration skills, the communication skills, the critical thinking skills. These are the most important things that we bring in. And so, like, when I think about, I don't think AI is ever replacing any part of that, right? I think it can augment it, and we need to focus it in to get the benefits, so we drive more of what we've always been trying to do. And so, when I think about how educators are going to use it, I really hope that these are tools that empower them to create much richer experiences for the students, and help them really kind of inspire the students in different ways, help them create more human experiences in the classroom where students are collaborating with each other, they're talking to each other, they're debating with each other. Like that's what we wanted to drive. And likewise, when I think about um, for students, if we're outsourcing our critical thinking to AI, that's not the point of education, right? The point of education is for us to drive, like, hey, look at this tool, Google Vids. I can create this amazing video and really, showcase my thinking in a different way. I can have richer dialogues, really helping us drive those things. So, I think the purpose and what we've been trying to do always stays the same, and these tools are really just about augmenting and enhancing that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that kind of reminds me of something you talked a little bit about, which is Gemini in particular and LearnLM is designed to kind of think about these pedagogical aspects, right? Can you expand a
Yeah.
little bit more on what that means for LearnLM?
Yeah, so within LearnLM, we've been working with educators for really, a greater part of a couple of years now. Um, and the biggest insight was when you look at these models, right? If you look at some of the standard benchmarks, like, okay, it can do really well on the AIM exam, which is a very difficult math exam. So it's quite impressive that it can do very well on that exam. But does it do the things that will help you learn it better? Does it do the things that will help you that can really pedagogically are important there? And we've really ensured that we have evals and we have benchmarks that we can test our model on that aren't just these classic benchmarks that, yeah, you can answer questions, but really are looking at these pedagogical practices around how it's driving active learning, how it's really deepening metacognition, all of these different aspects. And we have white papers published on our thinking there. So we evaluate our models against that. We ensure that we're improving our models against that. We ensure that these models are really good at um, when being applied in these different ways, because you can, as we talked about, you can customize these models to say act this way or act that way. That when you're asking it to do that, it really understands what is needed of it in a much deeper way. So that's been a big part of the work, and we're really excited to see that we, at least on these pedagogical benchmarks that we're testing on it, that LearnLM and now Gemini 2.5 are really showing best in class performance.
As you mentioned, what we don't want is the AI to get rid of critical thinking, right? And so I think it's great that you guys are thinking about how to push the model on things like how do you increase metacognition and is it pushing active learning and all this kind of things that would, like you said, make it kind of more pedagogically rigorous. The other aspect that you talked about was data protection and administration controls, and that's really been grounded in the approach that Google Workspace for Education has been executing upon for a decade plus now. Can you talk a little bit more about how you guys thought about the rollout? And we felt very intentional, right? Like Gemini is available for this age at this point, and eventually becoming available for under 18 and all that kind of thing. How do you guys think about that rollout? And what's your process in thinking about when and how to make these tools available to a growing part of your audience?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we spend quite a bit of time on. So the first is uh, a really rigorous safety testing that we do with new functionality that comes out, and really all functionality. We go through a strict kind of under 18 eval process and red teaming to ensure that it's kind of meeting those safety requirements for before we make the feature even available for under 18 audiences. So not all functionality that we have with Gemini is available for under 18 audiences, but we have been able to make the core part of it, the experience available now. But as new features are coming out, video generation, other things, it all goes through that process to ensure that we safety test, Gemini Live, all every new feature, every part of that needs to be tested, and we have a rigorous process to do that. And then as we have been able to roll it out, the second thing we spend a lot of time on is how do we ensure that schools and institutions can deploy this appropriately, that they have the right controls. And for a lot of this functionality, we go through a process to make sure that we are putting the right controls in the admin console for educators so they can choose exactly, is this something that they roll out to just teachers or students? Is this something that they roll out to certain grades, certain schools? They can create what we call OU, different organizational units in whatever format they want, and say, well, this functionality is available to this subset of users. So we really try to make sure that schools have a very rich and powerful capability to then make that call on what functionality goes to what part of their user base.
And is that when you guys also announce the classroom management tools on Chromebooks, is this all just part of that same administrative control, or is that a additional feature set specifically for Chromebooks?
So in Chromebooks, the big thing that we launched was Class Tool. So that actually is more at the teacher level. So it's a kind of a new, exciting set of functionality where a teacher within a classroom can connect it with their Google Classroom roster and push out to a set of students. I want you to focus on this work, and even lock the tab. So, if you think about this world of AI where there's so many possibilities, that we think it's really important that we're empowering teachers with better classroom management. So now, and it really goes back into kind of this overarching theme of giving teachers, giving our users choice and control of what they can do. So, for example, a teacher can say, well, here's an assignment, push the window out to everybody in their class, and it's locked down. So they can't open up a chatbot on the side. Or they can say, well, here's an assignment, but you have to use this classroom gem that I just created. You can't use anything else on it. Only those two windows are available to you. So you can do this work and you can use this version of the chatbot. We also have advanced functionality where a teacher can cast the students' screen directly to the whole class, because they say, "Oh, Jennifer's been doing amazing work here. Look, folks, look what she's been doing." The teacher can live stream and look at any student's screen when it's in this mode, and it also has really great functionality where you can get real-time captions. So if a teacher is talking, you can get captions for students with disabilities, as well as translation. So you can have live translated captions of what the teacher is talking about to different students. So in ESL classrooms, that can be very, very powerful. So we really are trying to make it so that there's really, uh, a lot of options the teachers have, so that when they're managing the classroom, they can have better control on how people are using technology and what they're doing and what they're not doing.
Thank you for that clarification. And I think it helps frame so that you have these admin and control capabilities at like the district or school level in terms of certain type of access and data security. And then you also, even at the teacher level, have additional layers of, hey, here's control and here's what you can utilize and here's what you can utilize when, all in the hopes of increased supervision and management for a student and an overall richer experience. Is that fair
Yeah,
summary?
yeah, I think that's exactly right. I go back to, I think, a big reason that so many schools have always loved Google for Education products has been our focus on making sure that we have, as I mentioned, accessible, simple, manageable products. And it's been on our ethos for a really, really, really long time. And we do that, at the administrator level so they can deploy technology well. And we've done that with Classroom, now with Classrooms and Chromebooks, to make sure that teachers can create really rich experiences. And I think all of that is core to how we really want to be supporting the different audiences in education.
Cool. So I had the privilege of working a little bit with your team and the learning sustainability team through Google's acquisition of Photomath. And one of the things that I took away from my time was the emphasis and care around the ecosystem, right? If you guys are building products for certain ecosystems and really being thoughtful about how are you engaging and supporting that ecosystem. You guys have launched a huge amount of functionality and capabilities here this past week. Thoughts about how does this going to impact the overall education ecosystem and other players within the space?
I think you're exactly right. I mean, a big part of what we've always thought about across all of our products at Google is how do we really kind of create the APIs, create and foster the ecosystem. And I think particularly at Google, because we are providing very much, we play kind of on the full stack of that, right? We are the foundational models research lab pushing the frontier of what AI can do. We're the Google Cloud provider for many schools, institutions, ed tech partners out there. We have productivity, workspace, and learning management classroom tools. We have hardware with Chromebooks. We're in all aspects of it, and every one of those areas actually do spend a lot of time thinking about how we interface with partners. So, for example, a lot of the work that we did with LearnLM, we really tried to make that available to edtechs out there through AI Studio, as well as with Cloud Vertex. So edtechs can get the benefit of us pushing the frontier, as well as partner with us to help us understand where it's working, where it's not, because everybody has different use cases that they're testing this AI out on, and it's really important for us to understand where it's doing great and where it's falling short, and kind of the breadth of use cases that people are trying to push these models on. Because we recognize our products, search, YouTube, classroom, they're going to push in certain dimensions, but other people are pushing in other dimensions. So I think that's a really important area that we pushed on. Within Workspace and Classroom, we have an add-on framework where people can plug into that, and many ed techs, they build really great things on slides, or we have classroom add-ons where you can fit into our workflow. We also do the reverse of that, where for Classroom, where we also we allow ed techs to fit into the classroom flow. We also build our products so they fit into other learning management tools like Canvas and Schoology. So we have Gemini LTI, Meet LTI tools to work with other products there. And again, we work with so many different customers. We understand the variety of their needs. There's never one size fits all. Different people are always working on different parts of that, and we try to make it so that our products are as interoperable as possible, so it does fit in as seamlessly as possible for with the broader ecosystem, and that we encourage that the broader ecosystem to fill in all the different parts of that, because the needs are so great here.
And you guys also they do this on like a global level, right? I think I've heard a statistic: 150 plus million students, teachers, educators on Google Classroom globally, and that's just one of those products, like as you said, across the stack that you guys are building. How do you think about this from like a global perspective, right? There's a lot of disparity, I think, currently today in terms of access, familiarity. The digital equity is not there per se. How do you guys think about the global impact and making sure that all this stuff across the stack is available and helpful for people, regardless if they're sitting in Mountain View or they're all the way on the other side in Jakarta?
Yeah, as we talked about when we started off, right, a big part, our mission: organize world information and make it accessible and useful. And I think that's so core to how everybody at Google thinks about, like, how do we make sure we can reach the global population? And it's a big part of, a huge part of our footprint is actually international. And I think, on all the different, so one, just on us being able to bring Gemini for education for free to our user base, as these models have gotten so much better in quality, but also in cost effectiveness. I think that's a big part that I'm really excited about, because it really helps us ensure that we can bring the benefits of this to our overall kind of global footprint in a much bigger way, and empower people to start getting access to those benefits. I think we also with our core product, search and YouTube, they've always been at the, it's been amazing to me. I've gone to places like a village in India, and you're seeing people using YouTube, and this 10 years ago was unimaginable, right? They went from really like barely having connectivity to now streaming video on their phones in just such a short period of time. So, like, I think we are making educational materials and content available broadly. I think with AI, we see these big trend lines where the pace that they're getting better, but also the cost that they're improving is dramatic. We're able to distill these models down to smaller models. We have Gemini Nano models, other models that can really bring the cost down, that can be deployed in a much larger scale on device, on Android phones. So I think it's actually very, very exciting I think one of the great things about technology is the cost curve goes down so fast that you do have these experiences or something that sounds really expensive right now, but it's not a short period of time before it's successful. I think YouTube's a great example of that. 15 years ago, the idea of streaming video and having the bandwidth to do that was unheard of in parts of the world, and now it's completely commonplace. So I think you're going to see a similar thing with AI as this stuff becomes much more accessible.
Very cool. I think that's definitely like you said, the trend lines are all in that favor, right? In terms of everything going down in cost and development, what is also kind of moving very rapidly is the pace of change. And you mentioned it's really hard to predict how quickly things are developing. So I'm not going to ask you to go out like 10 years or anything, but as you even just think about this upcoming school season, at least for the Northern Hemisphere, what are you most excited about and what are you most hopeful that you will see happen in this upcoming school period?
Yeah, I'm really excited in really kind of seeing the creativity of our user base and seeing the creativity of how people are going to start to apply and get the benefits of it. I think we've been in a world where, we've seen amazing things in pilots in a small scale, but pilots, they're great. You can see it much more closely, but you don't have the full visibility of like, well, what's going to actually happen in Indonesia? What's going to happen in Brazil? What's going to happen in a kind of more broadly around the world on how people bring this into their local context and their local understanding. We have confidence that we built the product strong, but there's always different variability in different school systems on how in higher ed institutions on how this technology gets used. So I'm really excited to see when we're putting these controls, these tools that I think are very powerful. We've seen great reaction in many of our studies so far, what people do with it and how they find ways to really drive benefit. I mean, like one example I'll give is we ran one pilot in Northern Ireland with a customer there, and they had, we had kind of gone in and said, well, we can use Gemini, and you can use these common use cases, you can quiz generate, and you can plan your day, and all. We have 20 or 30 different things, and they did it for a couple of months and came back with 700 different use cases of how they're using it and different applications of Notebook LM and different app, and it completely was astounding. And it goes back to the point of like, wow, if that's the potential here, how do we make sure that people understand that? How do we make sure that we can scale the goodness of that? How do we make sure that we're empowering schools to control how they deploy this, as well as drive PD to make sure that they're helping people understand the power of these tools in the right way. But I do think the possibilities here are just so vast. And that's what today's technology, like if you just froze the technology today, Gemini 2.5, you could already do so much. And I do think in the next couple of years, you are seeing, with deep research and the agentic capabilities, with VO and the video creation capabilities, you're continuing to see dramatic improvements. And I think it is a really exciting time, the most exciting time ever. I've been working in the space, as you said, from the early days of Khan Academy, thinking about access and personal learning. And I can't imagine a more exciting time than now in terms of how we can really bring such dramatic benefit to our user base.
I think the potential, like you said, super exciting, the creativity and the possibility of what teachers and students are going to come up with is, it goes kind of like to the whole point of like the art of teaching, right? Let's see what creativity comes out around all these interesting tools. Obviously, as one of the biggest players, not only in education, but also in general advancements in AI, I think it's been an incredible opportunity to talk with you. And we're super excited to see how Google continues to transform learning through AI usage inside and outside of the classroom. On that note, I want to say a huge thank you, Shantanu, for coming today and joining us. And I really appreciate you being able to share, give us an understanding of all the various different capabilities now that will be available coming shortly through Google Classroom.
Thanks for having me here. Really great to see you again, and I really enjoyed it.